Well, the Iran war is putting further strain on transatlantic relations. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier has now spoken of a deep rift with the United States. In unusually strong comments, he said that there will be no going back to before January 20th, 2025, when Donald Trump began his second term as president. And he slammed the U.S. administration for starting the war against Iran. Here's some of what he had to say.
Our foreign policy does not become more convincing simply because we refuse to call a violation of international law a violation of international law. We had to grapple with this during the Gaza war, and we must grapple with it in the Iran war as well. For, in my view, this war is a violation of international law. There is little doubt that, in any case, the justification of an imminent attack on the US does not hold water. This view also appears to be held by some within the US intelligence community. This war is also, please forgive me for saying so as someone directly involved, a politically disastrous mistake. And that's what frustrates me the most, a truly avoidable, unnecessary war, if its goal was to stop Iran from developing a nuclear bomb.
Let's get more on this now from our Berlin bureau chief, Max Hofmann. Max, the German president did not mince his words in criticizing the Trump administration and the war. He called it illegal, avoidable, a disastrous mistake. What do you make of that coming from Germany's head of state?
I was at that speech, which was taking place at the foreign ministry, and I must say the people in attendance were quite surprised that he got so political about this topic, because you have to remember that Frank-Walter Steinmeier, the German president, is the head of state, but he's not the head of government. So he has a largely representative function, and it's not unheard of that he reminds especially the political parties in Germany of what they're supposed to do. But criticizing an ally like that is pretty unusual.
Does this mark a shift, Max, in Germany's foreign policy stance? Is President Steinmeier's position on the war consistent with that of Chancellor Merz?
The German president is not in charge of foreign policy or governing, by the way. That would be the head of government, and that is the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz. And Friedrich Merz kind of sidestepped the issue of violation of international law in the past, although he has become much clearer on rejecting the Iran war. For example, recently he said had they been consulted by the US, they would have advised against this war. This was probably almost the strongest phrasing by Friedrich Merz in the past. But again, Steinmeier, the German president, is not in charge of that. And so there has already been some criticism from the party of Friedrich Merz on the comment of Frank-Walter Steinmeier already today, saying that this was not the job of the president, but that was the job of the government to classify this as a violation of international law or not.
Well, President Steinmeier arguably knows what he's doing. He himself served as Germany's foreign minister in the past. Could the president's statement, Max, have political consequences?
Well, he served as a foreign minister actually twice, so he does know what he's talking about. We don't anticipate any direct consequences here, but there could be indirect consequences. For example, sparking a debate in Germany because a majority of the Germans are not in favor of this war, actually disapprove of it, and also say it is not justified. So that's kind of on the same page as Frank-Walter Steinmeier, and this could have consequences in putting more pressure on the German government in classifying this officially also as a violation of international law.
How deep is the fracture in transatlantic relations now, Max?
Well, you remember that probably, Terry. A couple of weeks back, the German chancellor was in the United States and he visited Donald Trump back then. And back then they seemed to be going along just fine. Of course, a lot of things have changed since then, especially with NATO allies, including Germany, refusing to help with their military means to, for example, secure the Strait of Hormuz. And that didn't please the Americans. That's very clear. So as of now, it's very safe to say that the transatlantic relations have deteriorated in comparison to then, but you know how it is. In these times, it's really hard to say how long that will last.